better promote behaviors to prevent violence in football. And at the club level, I believe that even though we have not in Spain a real serious problem of violence, but we need to prevent, because even though in the present moment it seems that the size and the capacity of the group of supporters promoting violence in the stadium or outside the stadium they are not so big that they were as they were in the past, but we need to fight more against them in order to avoid that the size and the capacity of these groups is improved in the future. I wanted to start, but I would like to pass the floor to some other colleague in the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jose Maria Cruz de Andres, for this experience from FC Sevilla. Very much appreciated. Can we have one of the other participants? Which organizations, besides the ones that I mentioned on the international level, UEFA, FIFA, and La Liga, for example, domestically, have experience with as an impact in terms of sport, youth, and PVE?
May I say something? Can you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I would say that we started and our experience with our NGO, that is AC Milan Foundation. The most consistent organization in doing this kind of working are neighborhood sport organization that work directly with very local. So that's the way to make to create a link and a connection between schools, sport organization, and children, vulnerable children and youngsters, and that's the way you work in our point of view to prevent violence. Of course, it's important role of the legislators of FIFA and UEFA, but on the other way, we like to work very locally and with neighbors and organization, neighborhood sports association that work directly with and get straight to the youngsters that are there.
Martino, we seem to have a bit of a problem with the acoustic on your side.
Can you hear me now?
It's better.
Okay. I was saying that, of course, it's important that big organization and like UEFA and FIFA do the legislation, but also the way around to work with this kind of problems is in prevention, especially is work with local organization and sports association. They work at the neighborhood level that find out the youngsters that are at risk or they are like to drop out from school, and then involve them in sport program to be able to transfer them values of that are typical of sports and that can help them to get way back to lifestyle.
We have difficulties in terms of the connectivity.
Can you hear me now?
May I also have a short intervention? Yes. May I have also words on this topic after Martino?
So what we got from you is the intervention in terms of school sport, in terms of prevention.
Yes, Marion, I heard that the one level that Martino emphasized was the relationship between schools and sport organizations, and that the second issue that he spoke of was the neighborhood level. Perhaps Martino can just confirm for us that those were two essential issues, and maybe he wants to add just one issue. Let's just check in with him. It's unfortunately that his audio is not so good.
Martino?
You have to unmute, Martino.
Martino, you have to unmute. You're unmuted. You're still muted.
No, it's since he stopped using headphones that it's not working properly.
Okay.
Okay, Marion, I suggest that we carry on with Florine and that we get back to Martino later.
Florine, yes. Sir Martino, please, hopefully it goes better when you come back to us. Florine, would you like to continue also with the organization that you think have the biggest impact?
Yes, thank you very much. The ideas shared by our colleagues, by our co-panelists, are very interesting, and they reflect a reality. They reflect a perspective. Everyone is, of course, depending on the position he or she holds and the level of involvement in a perspective against the, let's say, reality that we are living in. Yeah. So as an employee of the Football Federation, yeah, I had the chance to work both with UEFA, less with FIFA, but also with clubs. And yes, I share the opinion that representative organizations like FIFA, UEFA, or federations have as primary role to regulate and to represent. But still, we all have the same mission in the end, with clubs, with federations, with confederations, or with FIFA, to protect the integrity of football. So when we talk about the impact, I take always into consideration the ecosystem where I am present. Yeah. So I always take into consideration the fact that I am not outside of the UEFA world. Yeah. We are part of UEFA world or of FIFA world or of the other confederations worlds, but I am also part of the world of our clubs. The first question we had when I started with the federation 5 years ago was actually exactly this one. What is our impact? How deep can we reach into society? Yeah, are we as strong as, I don't know, the medical services? Yeah, can I see a football match where an ambulance is also reaching? Are we stronger than the state? Yeah, this is a good question, and it's the question that is actually always following us when we have an initiative. When especially we have an initiative that is dedicated to fight discrimination, to fight marginalization, to promote integration, and in the end also to help young people not to fall into the trap of radicalization. In this respect, in our opinion, this is our experience. I cannot say that it's the best experience or the worst. Yeah, it's my experience. What helped us develop successful programs was always the fact that we understood and acted inside an environment, yeah, where every stakeholder played a role. The advantage that we had, of course, was the fact that via UEFA networks, via sharing experiences with other federations, we didn't have to lose time in learning lessons by ourselves. Yeah, we received already learned lessons from our partners, and this was a big benefit. On the other hand, of course, with the support of our partners in the clubs, I mean, and I also mean the partners from the public authorities, from the civil society, we were also, from the universities, we were also able to reach really deep into society. Yeah, because the vehicle itself, yeah, the phenomenon itself, when I'm speaking about football, I'm speaking about a social phenomenon, is powerful enough, yeah, for our purposes.
Thank you so much, Florin, from your experience.
Mariam, may I join?
Yes, 100%. Thank you, relevant.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Mariam, and thank you so much, Professor Christo, for organizing this beautiful meeting. And I am very glad to be amongst of you. And I am the Director of Sports and Corporate Relations of World Ethnosport Confederation from Turkey. So for the first question, I would like to say that as World Sport Confederation, we are engaging with the traditional sports and games. So this is something unfamiliar with many other people. we can consider this as a new page on the institutional process. But on the other hand, I have to admit that the biggest impact, which organization would have the biggest impact? It's obviously we can consider this as the football associations, federations. But at the same time, we need to consider that what kind of impact that they have, or what kind of contributions or responsibilities they should take, considering fans or players. Fans, okay, they love football. They have the passion in their hearts. They go to visit seeing football, but maybe at the same time having these big amounts of fans, or having this big amount of impact on the society, maybe the federations, especially football federations, in this sense they carry more responsibility, because from time to time, in each and every country, we see the negative perspectives from football. Considering doping, sometimes fights, and especially this is something that should be taken care of more. In Turkey, we are facing this a lot, especially fans. They see the club administration, they fight with each other and with the bad words. And the youth, the youth fans, the administration, they are like examples for them in their lives. So in this sense, the football authorities, they should take care of these perspectives. On the other hand, of course, I would like to say that every country has a different passion. I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily football. But before, I wanted to point out this. But when you go to, for example, Mongolia, or in some other countries in Middle Asia, or in Yakutia, I have been to those countries, and traditional sports carry more meanings for the society. Instead of playing football, they ride horses. In Mongolia, for example, the kids, starting from the year of fourth, they start riding horses. They make sports, so that in those countries, I think that those sports authorities have more impact on societies. And it was something very beautiful to see that those beautiful kids riding horses, and they were touching to the nature in a sense. And it is something related to their roots, the traditional way of life they are preserving. It is very important also for those countries who carry the traditional sports with more importance, to keep the responsibilities and to be good examples for the youth. This was what I wanted to share with you for the first question.
Thank you so much. I mean, I would have not expected, coming from the soccer side, to have that opening, the global opening of the values and the traditional ways of life, and the socialization in that. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that contribution, Luen.
Sure.
Take one more answer for question number 1 before we move on. I know that there is a lot of football organizations, but we also have Olympic committees here that I'd like to encourage.
May I jump in as Director General of the National Olympic Committee? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Please proceed.
May I jump in? Thank you for your question. It's a pleasure to be here sharing my views with such high-level panel. And for the first question, I don't have a ranking list about the organizations who have a more important role to tackle this issue. Of course, I would like to underline the role of the umbrella organizations, namely the international federations and first and foremost the International Olympic Committee. But in my opinion, when we are talking about tackling violent extremism, we are facing a kind of a dilemma. On the one hand, we have lots of organizations, lots of grassroots clubs who deliver a terrific job promoting social values, social inclusion through sport. But on the other hand, the very same clubs have top officials delivering in public broadcasting programs hate speech, funding and financing groups of funds connected with extreme right parties or extreme left parties, and this has to be clearly underlined. And very important is the role of the media. Sometimes the media are eager for scandals related to violence, but they don't have a footer on the last page of the newspaper to showcase brilliant examples of best practices of grassroots sport clubs, or even national federations or international federations working with the privileged communities and promoting their social integration using sport as an invaluable tool. So it's very, very important to raise the awareness of decision makers about this. We cannot have two faces. If we want to walk the talk and to have a clear zero tolerance approach to violent extremism, we cannot afford to have people on the boardroom promoting and instilling hate speech, not even supporting groups of fans clearly connected with ideas who doesn't have space in sport. And for the first question, I would like to underline these topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paulo Almeida. That is a really important point. It goes to you play on the field and how we play off the field. And
Yes.
yeah, thank you for that contribution. Can we in the with regard to time go to question number 2? I'm sure there is a lot of Mr. Miranda. Did you have a pressing issue for number 1 still?
But we can move on. No problem.
If you can make it quick, I'll allow it, because we do have an hour.
Okay, then I'll say it very quickly. Basically, this question makes me think about a reality in which we don't know very well what actually is being done. So that's maybe a quest that has to be followed, because grassroots are obviously an enormous world of opportunities and work well done near the pockets of poverty or the fields where injustice is and where revolt pops up. And these grassroots usually are done by clubs or even non-sports organizations, but using sports, whatever sport, football, I mean soccer or cricket or basketball, whatever lights the fire on the spot. But the thing is, all these methodologies, all this work is actually very, very dispersed. And basically, the major clubs can network. I'm actually, we are sharing here place with some friends from other clubs. So we meet often in several networks. We keep working together, but it's important to look at the grassroots level and to see and to engage these bigger networks, being regional or being worldwide, and to strengthen their contact points with the grassroots work. That's my point.
Thank you very much. I mean, we often forget that federations are also NGOs. And so there is this whole civil society sector out there that supports sports federation, and sports federation and themselves and sporting bodies are NGOs as well, members of civil society. Thank you. That was I'm glad we took that point in for question number 1. I'd like to move to question number 2. in terms of your experience and also the experience of your organizations, how can sporting bodies and federations play a bigger role in promoting sport for youth and PVE? The focus is really on youth here. So I really would welcome contributions from all sides. Thank you.
Is it possible to go in?
Rafael first, and then Dr. Emevura. Will we have you after Rafael speaking? Thank you so much.
Thanks to all, and thank you to have this opportunity for Real Betis. Is a great pleasure to be here and to add our little opinion on that. So our view in this regard is that one of the main responsibilities that we have as clubs, and in my case as foundation, is to promote all those actions that make conversations, and this is something that can be very well done, I would say, working jointly with other teams that we usually we play against them, and we always are in competition in terms of football, in the case of football, but I think it's spreadable to other sports. So I think if we are able to work jointly with all these other teams that we usually play against with, for example, in our case with, for example, before Jose Maria has been talking, as our colleague in the same city, our two teams are usually with a very strong competition. But every time we have done something together, it makes a big difference. So I think we should be an example in this line of work. All youth are looking at us, and they have us as clubs and our teams and our players. They have a very, very strong potential of influence on them. So I think the first step is to be coherent on this. So if, as another colleague has mentioned before, we need to be first the first example in this regard. So this is for me one very, very important point, to work and to make joint actions that make all our friends see that we work together and we are on the same line and we work with the same objective, and of course in terms of prevention against violence, but also of course working at the schools. When we visit a school with our club, with our players, with our legends, to talk about values and to talk and to say, for example, when we visit a school, we say hello to all the other team supporters, and we wish them to enjoy the activity as well. So these kind of gestures, or for example, as Sevilla did when we had the last game with them in their stadium, they did a tribute to our former player who passed away, Mickey Roque, and this was something really important for all those people who were watching this game. So this kind of gestures, this kind of actions make people think, and this is a really, really important influence. Of course, the governing bodies of football has a role in this regard, but to promote this kind of activity and this kind of action. This our view, and this is what I wanted to highlight in this regard. Thank you so much for the opportunity and my big support to keep on working on this. Thank you.
Thank you for this contribution. This is the time for you to share what you have tried and what really worked from your side as sporting bodies and federations, and school visits, for example, and value-based approaches that we just heard from Rafael Moela is one route. Please share others as well.
Yes, hello. This is Olaf Hansen from World Taekwondo.
Sorry, Olaf, can I just, because I promised I promise Christian to be next. Can we have Christian and then
Apologies.
Olaf? Just doing that. I think it was a technical switch there, but you're next then, Olaf, after Dr. Christian Mivora. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marian. Let me also start by thanking the UNOCT for the opportunity by extending this invitation to us to participate in this expert panel group. I would just quickly want to briefly address your second question, which talks about playing a bigger role by sport federations or sports bodies. I strongly believe that sports federations, and I mean international federations and even national federations, have a bigger responsibility here to play. What you have seen, or what we see happening currently as we speak, is that we have different sports federations having developmental programs on how to promote their sports. They don't have specifically targeted programs on how to use sport as a tool to prevent violent extremism. And to me, this is where we need to take it to the next level. You agree with me that football, for example, which is an industry that I've been in the last 12 years, has a very wide outreach. We have about, for example, 211 countries that are members of FIFA, even more than the numbers of the United Nations member entities. Now imagine having FIFA, for example, developing a program that has to do with using sports, football now, to address violent extremism. By this, I mean dedicating, because all these things we're talking about has to do, at the end of the day, with funding. There must be an entity that will have to fund the entire program. And what are the programs we're talking about? We need to have programs, we need to have facilities, we need to have incentives that will attract people to come and participate in the sports. And in this area, I feel just as you have the FIFA Forward program, which is dedicated towards development of football, you also have various federations targeting youth development. Women football development is an international issue for now. I think it's something that we could also sell the idea that we need to have a dedicated program towards using sports or football as a tool to prevent violent extremism. And once this program is able to be created, then there will be a dedicated funding that can be channeled towards member associations that will key into this particular program. Because I speak from Africa, where I come from. There are so many contending issues, just as I know in other countries and continents too. Most governments are overwhelmed by the challenges that they have, and asking them to put sport as a tool that they will use some of their very lean resources to fund will be a big challenge for most of them. If we want to have very progressive and very rapid impact in this area, I believe that the international federations should be brought to the table to commit to dedicating a developed program that they would target this specific item on the agenda, and this they can also drive through their member associations, and before we know it, we can have this happening all around the globe in a more cohesive manner. Other than that, what we'll have is just sporadic actions by people who actually think about it and who are working towards executing what they have thought about. So this is just my contribution, and I feel it's something that should be explored to the fullest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Imabura. This is a coordinated approach that you're promoting, and we definitely would like to follow that up. As you know, we're working towards a handbook and a guide for organizations and government, but also a training handbook, something really hands-on that an organization like FIFA can use to develop such a program. So we'll call on you for contribution on that side, most definitely. Thank you so much. It was Mr. Hansen next, if I'm not mistaken. Over to you, Ola.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I can say I agree with the previous speaker that it would be very good to have a set of best practices, a set of guide to provide to international federations to further develop our programs. Having said that, World Taekwondo has, for the past quite a few years, worked to promote the value of peace, worked to promote tolerance, inclusivity, diversity, courtesy, integrity. As a martial art, Taekwondo has a lot of these values inherent, and these values, of course, go across also with the Olympic values and overall values of sport. And the question was what could be done, and I would like to give just a few examples of what World Taekwondo have done. In 2009, we created the Taekwondo Peace Corps, which is an organization that has trained young university students and dispatched all over the world to work at grassroots levels in connection with our member national associations, to provide training for youth, as well as teaching peace and the Olympic values. We have also, since 2017, we founded the Taekwondo Humanitarian Foundation, which works mainly with the refugees and displaced persons, and we have mainly. Apologies for that. We have mainly set up in refugee camps. So our main project is in Asarak camp in Jordan, where we have built a training facility to be able to provide training opportunities and sport opportunities for the refugees in that camp. And this is focused mainly on the youth. It has been quite successful, and we have several other international federations, both Olympic and non-Olympic, that has joined us and are developing and providing other sporting opportunities in this camp as well. This model has been further tested. We have set up the same operations in refugee camps in Rwanda, as well as in Turkey, with a few other locations coming up. And we're more than happy to provide further information on these projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olaf. We'll come back definitely to that offer, because we're looking for case studies that have worked and that have had good experiences in various locations, geographically speaking. So, and I was also wondering whether the Taekwondo Peace Corps is something that other federations could take on, like a soccer, football Peace Corps or something like that this year. But I'm curious to hear others in terms of what has worked or what has not worked, for that matter, for others as well.
Yes, Marion, and that does take us to both questions 3 and 4. Number 3 being the capacity building programs or measures that exist, and also the handbooks, material and curricula. So I'm suggesting to you that we can perhaps take responses on both of those issues for a while and see maybe what the suggestions are.
Yes, we can. We do have till 1930, Christo, but we can go ahead if nobody else has a contribution in terms of how sporting bodies can play a bigger role. We will move as Christo suggested.
I have one small observation, if possible.
Can we just take that one, Christo, one small observation from Florin?
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much. What we did to play a more important role in promoting sport for youth was to educate youth. So we have in Romania a program, it's called Youth Council. It is dedicated to educate young leaders who later, after graduating our Youth Council program and after receiving some support from the Federation, will go back into their communities and promote those values and those principles via football programs that are actually strengthening integration and strengthening the community networks that keep especially young people closer to the society and as far as possible from radicalization.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Can I add something? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. It's nice to see Florian also from the other FA. So I'm Hedley Sassi. I'm working at the Belgian FA, just like Mariam said, football and social responsibility. I just wanted to add also because we use the COVID period to stand still, to think about the approach we need to do in the future. And I just wanted to share that we use the UN framework, the SDGs, to think about how can we have a bigger impact on society, not only youth but also elderly people. And also the main question was prevention and reconnect the society, reconnect people, also people with thinking on violent radicalization. How can we use sports, use football to reconnect with society? And we developed a new project that we also shared it with the European Commission because they had a call on prevention of radicalization. And there we used 40 different football pitches that are built in the cities and the communities, and we will renovate them first of all because we want to make them more attractive. But secondly, we want to link them with activities, programs, and that's also we want to organize formation to become an ambassador, a local ambassador, and that can be a youngster of the city, for example, Anderlecht, and he wants to be an ambassador in his community. So he will receive a formation to have the right tools to organize activities, to make sure the activities are safe. If there's someone who's telling him something worrying, that he can guide him to the right organization. So we want to create in partnerships with the cities, with the communities, different partners who are responsible for activities, in sports, health and well-being. So not only sport organizations, but also municipalities we want to create a network. And just I wanted to share that because it's new for us. We don't have any handbook, so maybe it's also an answer on the two other questions. But we are reaching to other organizations who are experts, organizations on the topic of radicalization or health and well-being or other topics to gather the information and to create something together in Belgium. But if there is a framework or a handbook from the UN, for example, or from FIFA or UEFA, we will for sure use it to create our own story in Belgium. Just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Thank you, Hedley. That really leads us immediately into because you talk about the facilities that are there, and then sometimes you have the facilities and they're supported by municipalities, but then we do not have necessarily investments that go in terms of addressing, and I'm looking at Jackie's question, integrity issues. Handbooks and capacity building programs could assist. And going towards Christo's suggestion to go to 3 and 4, any capacity building programs and measures that you know that exists and assist with values transfer for youth and sport and PVE. And you can also link that if you want with handbooks, material, curricula, toolkits that you know and that have been tested, that have been tried out, or if there's monitoring evaluation with it, or just good examples that you would like to inform us of and give a little bit of more feedback.
And Marion, if you can take Mr. Rodolfo Pavarini first, please. He was trying to come in.
I see.
Buenos días, todas y todas. La verdad que es importante para nosotros estar presente en este panel y quiero hablarles sobre nuestra confederación, sobre todo lo que aglutina nuestra confederación, que aglutina a todos los municipios, a todos los territorios, a los deportes olímpicos y no olímpicos de la República Argentina. Y el mensaje que nosotros le queremos dar de lo que nosotros estamos llevando adelante lo va a decir acá nuestra traductora a partir de este momento. Gracias.
Okay, so this was Rodolfo speaking. I'm going to translate for him, but he wanted to, to talk to you in his own, language, in our language, Spanish. The idea for us is to talk about a little bit about the role of the Confederation. This is a confederation for sports in Argentina, and it has a very important role because we work with all territories. You know, in Argentina we have a federal government, but then we have different provinces and different municipalities, all of them with different governments and different roles. So we work all together with them. And the thing is that when we think about violence and extremism in Argentina, we need to mention inequality and all the problems that are related to economic crisis and everything that is derived from that. So we believe that these inequalities, which are fed from social and economic crisis, are the main triggers for violence in our country. So we believe that in order to fight against violence, we need first to address these inequalities and to provide all our young people with opportunities to become an active participant in sports with all its values. So in our confederation, we have collaborated with the stakeholders in the civil society, in the private sector, in the academy, the media, sports management, sport clubs, government organizations, and also with women and gender identity activists, because that is also something that is very important to address through sports, the gender gap that we have in our country mainly. So we have developed different programs to work at different levels with children and young people to more effectively face terrorism threats at all levels, with a view towards preventing the early involvement of young people who have been, as we said, unfairly cast off the system after being marginalized or discriminated against, making them both psychologically and socially vulnerable. So the idea is that we have sport-related values such as solidarity, partnership, perseverance, surmounting equality and respect, which pave the way to develop a sense of belonging to counteract against those feelings of discrimination and marginalization. And as some of our counterparts here already said, none of this is possible without financing and without resources. So we have thought about an approach in order to implement effectively and successfully our programs. And what we did was working on a strategic partnership, which will allow our organization to internationally cooperate with the ICSS, which will be our guarantor in this project. And the idea is to develop new financing tools for sports by means of a cryptocurrency based on blockchain technology. So one of our main objectives is to foster sustainable sports as well as to strengthen the volunteer programs carried out by Save the Dream. So again, the main ideas here would be to fight against inequality through projects and programs that can be financed with or without government contributions, in order to ensure that we have the finance independence that we need to put our programs into practice. So thank you very much for your time and for listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pavlini and team. We will also definitely come back to you in terms of valuable case studies of your early development and obviously also of your volunteer program, which is so important because, I mean, without the volunteers, we would not exist. And if you have programs that have had good results, we'll definitely would be very interested to hear more about that. Thank you for your contribution. Can we have some maybe one more example for a capacity building program that exists with regard to PVE or anything that you've come across or used?
Can I say something quickly?
Yes.
Who?
Levent.
Event, and then afterwards we have Rosa. I was waiting for Rosa.
Okay. Rosa, ladies first. Okay, ladies first. Rosa.
Yes, I have been waiting for Rosa. Please go ahead.
Okay.
And
okay.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes.
Yes. Nice to see you.
Nice. Yeah. Then I prepare my intervention during this afternoon. But after listening my colleagues, I will start by the end, okay? Let me show it. Can you read it? Prevention of violence.
Yes, and it is in English. Wonderful.
On the Real Madrid Foundation methodology, we have included handbooks for families and coaches for preventing violence. This was the end of my intervention, okay? We need handbooks. Yes, we need handbooks. We need handbooks to support the work of the coaches that represent the positive adult role model for the children and for the youth we are invested in. Okay? We need to have always a long-term commitment with the children and with the youngsters. Long-term commitment. And to do it sustainable, I absolutely agree with our friend Rodolfo. We need to guarantee the financial sustainability of the programs. You asked Marion about handbooks to support the work we want to do. Doesn't matter, Taekwondo, basketball, football, but on the Real Madrid, as you know, we are concentrated on football and basketball. We need to support the role of the coaches in front of the children. We need to support their works in values. We need to prepare them to train in football, to educate in values through football, to educate in values through basketball. What we propose in our model of intervention is to support education, and vocational training. You ask in the first question, which is the most biggest entity in terms of what? You don't let me to present anything, Marion. I am doing tricking, okay? 73 countries, 50,000 children. But this is not a group of boys and girls, 50,000. We know them one by one. We know who is Paula, we know who is Andrea, we know who is Paul, we know who is Antonito. Why? Because in a long-term commitment in Romania, in Argentina, in Chile, in Italy, in Portugal, we have all the friends all together here. In a long-term commitment, we take out them from the street and we put in a social sport school. And we hope to have with us that boys and girls during all the schooler life, 10 years, 11 years. We know them, we support them with their studies and the psychological support. We know their family. We know their friends. We contact the school, their teachers. We want to change their life and to offer new opportunities. And one of the main objectives is to improve their self-esteem, their autonomy, their motivation, and the pride of belonging to our social sport school. If you belong to the team of the Real Madrid Foundation, you don't need to be part of any gang. You don't need to join any jihadist group. You don't need to join any army group. You want to be part of your community. We want to make real local development. We want the youth stay in their community, in their countries. We are working in Tanger, in one of the more dangerous areas that send jihadists to Spain. But we are working in that specific area because they want to be part of the social sport school of Paideia, and they want to stay in Tanger. They don't want to reach Europe. We are working in a complicated triangle in the north of Central America: Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. If you belong to the school of the Real Madrid Foundation, you don't need to be part of the gang known as Maras. It's something really easy, but it's something really powerful. We need to offer the children and the youth opportunities. We foster their education. We try to send them to the university with a grant, or we reinforce their vocational training. They really believe they can achieve their dreams, and they want to be something important in their community, important citizen. In the opposite side, we find many of these gangs, many of these groups that support our social sport school. They take care of our children because they don't want the new generation are part of the same group of they has been part. We have many examples in America, in Africa, in Asia. We join the gangs and they tell us, if somebody has offered to me when I was young that opportunity, I was not be part of that group. I will stay here. I will have a job. I will be honest. Then we offer a simple hook with the name and with the seal to take out the children from the street, to avoid the risk. We put them in a safety place and we train in values 2 days per week. But it's not only sport. We give them medical checkout, we give them support, nutritional support, psychological support, we contact the family, we support their study. Now in the pandemic moment, we support their study. But we need to prepare the adults in front of the children every day. The Real Madrid Foundation is located in Madrid. We have only a representation office in Beijing, but for the rest of 73 countries, we put the last responsibility in front of the children on the local partner, on the most relevant local partners in terms of education. Then our compromise is to teach, to prepare the coaches, and to teach and prepare the social workers. In terms of sport, we have our own registered methodology, and we use football and basketball for preparing, teaching the coaches. We follow their training session, we make recommendation, follow up, and so. But in terms of figures, Marion, you ask who is the best entity, who is the huge entity on the world supporting the prevention of violence. I don't know the other figures, but we have never met an entity with that long commitment with the children, with specific children, with their name, in terms of education, then as our friend from Argentina say, we need to make the model sustainable. We have, for example, the support of the UEFA Foundation this year for some of our projects, but we need to be conscious that if there are no financial support for that activity, it's quite complicated. Okay, then just for answering you, handbook and measures, we are now involving in a complete process of evaluations. We want to measure if the model of social sport school is having the impact on the life of the children supposed to be when the club creates the foundation. But during this year, we have involved in Bolivia in a study of measure of the percentage of violence with the children from our school, avoid violence at home. In Romania, we have measuring the impact of our social sport school in Bucharest. In Brazil, how to avoid violence in the favela of Jacarezinho and Niterói. And so then we know how important it is to measure, because yesterday I had been listening to another colleague from Africa. If we cannot demonstrate with figures in front of the bank, in front of the government, how important it is to support what we are doing, it will be complicated then. Let's measure, let's give figures, let's give information about impact to get the funds from the entities. Okay, finish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose. I'm so glad you were here, and you actually went from question 5 to question 1 and across and back, and it looks like an amazing, very holistic, very thought through approach from implementation to monitoring, evaluation, and everything in between, from nutrition to medical. It is a real wonderful example. We'll come back to you. We'll share resources, and we're looking forward to having one of your schools opening in South Africa. So we'll have a lot to talk about. And thank you for that contribution. I think that gave us a real amazing outlook. What is actually possible in terms of a sports federation? What can be done? Thank you, muchas gracias. I'm going over to Levent, who also would like to add something to that. Levent, thank you again.
Thank you, Marion. I just want to say something about the third question. I want to add a little bit of my thoughts. So, there are, of course, would be some better examples, but about this capacity building programs. First thing I would like to say that increasing the international interaction is the best way to share experiences and knowledge. In order to do that, promoting in other cultures sport into a society, into a nation, sometimes would bring a great attention for the youth, and to prevent them getting interacted in radicalistic or terroristic issues, they would have a new sport maybe in their hands to be played and to spend more time. So this is something like I am talking about something like a diversification. So when I saw Mr. Rodolfo from Argentina, he just reminded me about our own experience from Argentina. Argentina, for example, has a unique sport called pato. So what we have done, we hosted them in Turkey. We somehow met them and we shared our experiences. And now with Argentina, in Turkey, we presented their games. Now some of Turkish youth, they know pato. Some of the people are very interested in establishing a pato team and everything. So it was kind of a great capacity building with a new sport in another country. This is what I wanted to share. Because we need to keep the youth busy with sport to prevent them from the bad things. So especially touching the children's world is very important. So through these programs, I think that we would be able to achieve more things. I mean, increasing the international interaction is something that I wanted to share with an example.
Marian, may I speak?
Please, please.
Thank-
Welcome. And thank you, Levent. We will get back to you because you're thinking out of the box, and I really like that. Thank you. Yes, Juan.
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks to all the UN agencies involved in this 3 days of very exciting conversations. For me, I was invited as a beach soccer, as a president of the Beach Soccer Worldwide and the foundation. But recently I was appointed advisor to Mr. Moratinos in United Nations Alliance of Civilizations for Sports. And we are working on a very specific campaign on One Humanity that we believe is going to be a massive success very soon. On your first question, the biggest impact, I'm going to go very fast. So don't worry, I'm going to be really fast. It's easy to say FIFA, UEFA, Real Madrid or Barcelona or whatever club or IOC, NBA, etc., and all of them are doing an amazing job. But I think that the good thing of the sport is the network. It's amazing. So if you go to all the different sports and you go to all the different national associations of each sport, and you go to all the clubs of each sport, and you go to all the players and athletes and coaches and referees and organizers of tournaments, if you go to all the network that we have, sport by itself is the largest campaign in tolerance and work against racism and respect of everybody. And this is at the end what is going to make all this action that we do a success. It's a daily work that happens from all type of levels. For sure, FIFA is the largest investing governing body of the world in all this type of activities. But I think, for example, us in beach soccer, we work in the foundation for cleaning the beach, and we work with kids in difficult environment, and we work with kids with syndrome of Down, and now we work with Mr. Moratinos on the One Humanity thing. And I think every single action you do is as important as the big money that the big governing bodies are bringing into the picture. For sure, for me, the daily work of the sport and its values to be transmitted to kids and children and youngsters, to make them understand that we all have to respect each other and to create a better community for future. This is the number one thing. What is the role or a bigger role? For me, there is a need of a better interaction. There is a need of a better coordination. All the stakeholders have to participate. Sometimes we are too limited. I think UN has a unique position to capitalize all this huge, powerful power of sport to transform the society, and has to create the tools and the platforms to make it work well. For me, networking and values of all type of members, whether are member states, whether are federations of a specific sports, they all mean the same. It's working together to create a better world, a one humanity, a better community. This is for me basic. On handbooks and material, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to go on that. And for sure, IOC has a white paper, and FIFA has another one. And I enjoyed, although I am a Barcelona fan, I enjoyed seeing Real Madrid being so strong, and I know it, and I fully support it, and I respect it. But for me, yesterday, Matthias from the World Bank said something that is very important in these regards, and it's about, are we capable to measure the different impacts? Because if we are, at the end, we will be capable to generate more resources. The more resources we have, the more effective we will do, and we will be, and it will happen that by itself it will grow. And I partly agree, because this is something very important. Not everything is measurable, especially in this world. So we cannot get too focused on, we need to find tools to measure, etc., because many actions are not possible to measure, and we will do the same because it's of our heart. It's about what we think and what we want to do. It's our emotion. We want to bring this value to the sport and to the society. So yes, if we can measure and we can create tools and guides to improve what we are doing and to be more effective, very welcome. But at the same time, we have to bring to this one humanity concept our heart and make it work better for everybody. And I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Marian, you need to unmute.
I said thank you so much. Juan is going to go from the beginning and also through with your views on all these issues. And the measurement part, actually, I want to say what you said in terms of the emotional impact. We also measure a lot with storytellings, and what difference did it actually make in the lives of youth and children. This is a really legitimate measurement that we can use, and we do use very often. So it's not only the numbers, it is really what difference did it make in that life, and what is the story of this sports person and that youth. I would love to maybe have one brief input in terms of we heard so much now in terms of what should be in books and Real Madrid, what is already there. If there is anyone who has an expectation, what should be in a UN guide, what should be in a handbook that has not been mentioned, please do so, because I'd like to give the last 5 to 7 minutes to Christo just to summarize what we have done. And we as we said, we using this as a first step. And all the contributions are so valuable, and we don't like to do like a talk shop. This will be something that will be followed up, and all the contributions, whether it's from Africa or from Slovenia or South America, we will follow up with you. So if there is anyone who has a specific expectation in terms of number 5 of what a UN guide or UN handbook should entail, that is maybe bigger than one from a federation, in addition to what we heard already, then please go ahead. Mr. Miranda.
Hi, Marian. Hello, Marian.
Marian, please, from Malaysia.
Yes. Very good morning to all of you. Good morning from Malaysia. It's now 1:22 a.m. Early morning in Malaysia. Thank you so much for organizing these meetings. And thank you so much for the invite. It's a great honor to join you in this discussion. I'm not pretty sure that it has been raised by the other friends in this panel, but what we can see in Asia, and compared to Europe, where European countries can refer to the Council of Europe to see and to receive the best advices, the best practices, and Council of Europe is in position to unify the approach of countries when it comes to conducting the sport events or major events. In some other continents, I'm not sure about all other continents, but at least I can say about Asia, we are lacking an organization which unify the countries here. So that is why, in compared to Europe, for example, we don't have a common practice here that countries are aware of that or they are obliged to follow that. So in the United Nations is in good position that to come up with an idea to just raise good practices, especially when it comes to the prevention of any violent action or extremism, to come up with some guidelines, some common understanding and practices, and then assist and help the other countries to approach the same practices to have better understanding and then to coordinate better when it comes to conducting the event across the globe. So we can, at least in Asia, and I'm sure the other friends in different countries.
Jane? I think we've lost Jane for a moment.
Jane, can you hear us? Yes, I think we've lost him for a moment, Marion. Let's check for anybody else.
I didn't want to, Giorgio, I didn't want to overrun you. Were you about to say something before? Was it a parallel thing? Please.
Yeah, okay, I'll be very quickly. It's just about the idea of delivering these materials for, sorry, am I here on, or not? Yeah?
We can hear you, George.
Okay, that's me, okay, because I got messed up. So, a suggestion for this, one of the dimensions of these materials to be used as a sort of technical recommendation of UN for those who are actors in using sports for social development and for fighting extremism and for the de-radicalization. It would be not only to be focused on what are the best practices, but also to be focused on what's inside the organizations, meaning a lot of good work is being done by sports clubs and other organizations using and delivering only sports methodology. This is like believing that sports itself is a changer, and it is. But then you have to wait for the consequences. And a different thing, and we in Benfica Foundation have tested this with lots of success in different areas, is to actually use, to make teams with transdisciplinary teams with social workers like anthropologists, sociologists, you name it, and to actually use the mechanisms, the social control mechanisms and the deep structures in which mentalities and societies work, the deep dynamics, and use sports and the sports activities in order to, let's say, manipulate this to produce better results and to produce broader results. So a bit on the methodology and also on who has the trade. Different actors, not only sports coaches, sports technicians, but bring in the social workers that can help using sports for making a difference. So this is my point of view.
Thank you, George. The social workers were mentioned twice. Rosa also touched on that. Family coaches, social workers at the social net of our youth, especially also in light of what has been mentioned in the chat by Zahid, that we have this generation of children, mine included, that are on their video games, and a lot of violent games are promoted through video games. And then can one actually look at these kind of vehicles to develop something that is maybe a contra to promote violence through social media. This has been an amazing round. I would love to have 2 more hours with you. I know there's different time zones and Shaheen is like already at 2 a.m. I would just like to really thank you. We will follow up, and this is a promise. We will follow up with you because each of you have these experiences that we need to develop the guide and the handbook. And it's my pleasure to hand over to Christo to give a short summary of what we have dealt with today. Christo?
Thank you, Marion. I'm glad you said a short summary because it will indeed be quite a task to summarize what we've done in the last 2 hours. I think there's been a wealth of information and also very valuable cases and case studies that have been mentioned, and one will have to systematically go back to the discussion this evening to make sure that we do record actually all of that. In short, on the first question around which organizations have the biggest impact, Jose Jose, of course, focused there to remind us that international level organizations such as the international federations, and he spoke of FIFA and La Liga in particular, has such a responsibility. Interestingly, he noted that there are existing programs that addresses xenophobia and racism, but not the violence issue. Martino spoke of the importance for schools and sport organizations to work together, and he emphasized that particular interface. And then he also spoke of the neighborhood level. Floria had a very interesting focus on clubs in particular, and he spoke of sport as a social phenomenon. In other words, the impact also that then sport has through that. Other partners that he has mentioned was civil society and universities that could also play a meaningful role. He was saying that it helps them to understand an environment where every stakeholder plays a role. So there's quite an emphasis on participation here in this effort. Levent Akisi, emphasis there on traditional sport and games. He was mentioning horses in Mongolia, and then also the importance of football associations. And he spoke of examples in life, I think similar to what we would call role models, and the emphasis and importance of role models to address things like doping and fighting. Then Joao Almeida, very interesting emphasis on the ethics of leadership. You'll remember that he spoke of how inappropriate it is for some board members to get involved in hate speech and involve and collaborate with the extreme left and right. And he was really placing an emphasis on the importance of sport integrity at the leadership level. He also spoke of the role of the media and that the media is not often in touch with the levels that it should be. Then Jorge Miranda, he spoke of the reality in which we find ourselves, and that there's at the grassroots level an enormous world and a lot of work that need to be done, but that what was important is for us to work with bigger networks. And he mentioned the regional and national level, and that we could be mobilizing together in terms of methodologies which are very dispersed at the moment. On question 2, Raphael spoke about clubs and the foundation as important institutions to play a bigger role with the youth. He spoke of working jointly with all teams, and he gave the example of that when there's rivalry or competition between teams, if they do joint activities, then that is really very illustrative to all of their clubs and fans of working together. I thought his particular example of commemorating the death of a player and that gesture becomes symbolic and for all fans to witness, to see those leaders cooperating, was a very good one and an important one. Dr. Christian Emerua spoke of the importance of international and national federations, and that indeed he challenged them to say that there's a much bigger role to be played in the prevention of violent extremism by IFs and NFs. He specifically spoke, and you highlighted that, about the need for a coordinated approach, and he also used the word commitment to development programs through these players. Not only sporadic, but he was saying that we need to approach this systematically, and he was saying that there's a huge need for a training handbook in this area. Olof Hansson spoke of the need for best practices, or need for a best practice guideline to steer or to guide international federations further in development programs, and he was actually summarizing what the previous speaker also have said when he said that. But then very interestingly, Marion, in Taekwondo, and this is similar to our experiences back home also with martial arts, he was saying that it's inherent in their sport to emphasize values such as peace, tolerance, diversity, courtesy. And then also I could not help but sit upright, then because the next thing he mentioned Olympic values, and then from Olympic values he moved to the overall values of sport. And we often have that debate about what is Olympic values and what is universal values in sport, and that may differ in different continents all over the world in terms of how things like respect and fairness is understood. Florence spoke of the bigger role of community networks and the importance to educate. He spoke of the youth council in their own country, where education or an emphasis on education was played on youth leaders. Then Hedeli Sassi spoke of the COVID period, the first of our speakers to actually remind us of this new reality. And he was saying, interestingly so, because that's also what we saw elsewhere, that the Sport Federation made use of this quiet period in the COVID period to actually consider the SDGs, the United Framework for Sport Sustainable Development Goals, and that they were considering how their federation could have a bigger impact. And then from youth, he moved to elderly people, but also the importance of reconnecting people. He spoke of some 40 different case studies, football pitches where they actually do this. And then he also emphasized the importance of developing a handbook. Marion, his very last words, he actually said that it's important for them to develop their own story. And other than case studies, there's perhaps the potential here we heard here this evening for people and clubs and federations and sport bodies to tell their own story. And so also we need to think, other than capturing lessons of experience in terms of case studies that we discussed this evening, whether it's not also possible to capture some first-hand evidence in the form of stories and storytelling. Then Rodolfo Pavarini from Argentina, thank you for good communication there, spoke of the role of their confederation, emphasizing inequality. And they were saying that in Argentina, if inequality and the social economic crisis or issues are not addressed, then they will not be able to address violence. And so they were saying that the social economic crisis is indeed the main trigger of violence in that part of Latin America where they are from, and that what they need to focus on were opportunities for young people. Also an emphasis there on clubs and governments and the different programs that they have been offering. And then an emphasis on the early involvement of young people that were previously marginalized. So specifically relating to sport-related values, our Argentinian friend spoke of equality and respect, and then the sense of belonging. This issue came up at least 3 or 4 times tonight, the emphasis on the sense of belonging, because it's when people don't have a sense of belonging that gangs and other groups are able to grab them and get hold of them. I think Rosa also spoke about that. Then lastly, from our Argentinian friends, they emphasized strategic partnership, and then they were also discussing new financing mechanisms which they were exploring with Save the Dream and other partners. And they were saying that it's important to continue with or without government contributions. And in closing, Chairperson, you actually then highlighted the issue of the volunteer programs and how important volunteerism are in sport and also in this area. Then Rosa came on, and we had the wonderful second-time flair of a female on our program, and she spoke very passionately and very convincingly about the importance of preventing violence. The handbooks that she showed us, we'd love to, I'm sure, see in more detail and actually have a look at that. The one, she said that the handbooks address families and coaches in particular in preventing violence, and that it had a positive outlook. That the handbooks, the approach that they followed was that of a positive outlook, and that long-term commitment and sustainability of their programs were important. It's interesting to me how she emphasized the personalized nature of what they do. So she would say that when they focus on Monica, they know who her friends are, they know who her family is, they know what her social circumstances is, and they will follow her in that sense. Also, Rosa emphasized the role of coaches, and then she said, and the education in values, and then she said, and I quote, education, and vocational education. And again, she emphasized long-term commitment, and then what she called a school of life, which I understand to be an overall encompassing approach that is necessary to address youth and the issues around violence. She also spoke of a sense of belonging, and then the importance of finding a sustainable model. Rosa ended, of course, with words that are music in my ears, because she emphasized evaluation and the importance of knowing what the desired impact is that people want. And she said that evidence and measurement was much needed. That, of course, was also the words of Joan Cusco, our next discussant, when he quoted Matthias from the World Bank as saying that we need to be capable to measure the different interventions if we really want to make a big impact. Joan Cusco from BSWN also spoke of that the network in sport is amazing, and whether it's clubs, organizations, athletes, coaches, that sport is perhaps the most influential network all over the world. And he indeed said, quote unquote, that sport is indeed the largest campaign in the world, and that it emphasizes values and a better community, and that what was needed is better interaction, better communication, and then better working together in developing the tools and platforms that we've been speaking of. Lastly, perhaps, Shamim from Malaysia emphasized that what we lack in is to find organizations that unifies. So he was using the Council of Europe as an example, and then said that they really need that in Asia. I think me and you will agree that we also need that in Africa. And he was speaking of a need for good practices. Lastly, George added, of course, the issues around while you were saying that it is not only sport methodologies what we need to know what happens inside organizations, and he was urging us to use anthropologists and sociologists to actually understand the use of social dynamics deliberately in using sport as an intervention in the prevention of violence. That is as far as I'd like to go. Those are the things I'll take home tonight, Marion. I really enjoyed the session this evening. Thank you for your way of facilitating this, and I hope everybody had a fair chance of speaking. I'm sorry about the one or two instances where we had poor audio, but thank you from my side to the panel. It was a great evening. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Christoph, for this amazing summary that we will capture. And I would like, and we are only 10 minutes over. We caught up quite a bit on the earlier session. It was really amazing for us, and we would love to see you as the community of experts that I mentioned in the beginning, and hopefully can share. When we wrote to you, we wrote to you individually because we were not sure how busy you are and how involved you would like to be. We would love to have you as this particular panel of experts and share the details like email and form an email group, particularly because we're going now into the next round in terms of forming the UN guide and the training handbook, and we would really love to have your case studies and your positive examples and your experiences and your criticism and your M&E and involved in that and implemented then later on. So I want to go back from where I started. We are in the United Nations Day for Peace on Monday, shaping peace together. And we're also in the Talking from Africa, which is my home for the last 30 years. We are in the United Nations Nelson Mandela Peace Decade, and and that goes for the next 8 years still. And I quoted on the youth panel the other day, one of my favorite quotes. I know we started this morning with Mandela and saying sport has the power to change the world, which is really the most favorite, I think, quote for all sports people. But he also said, and I think that's where really leads to what the panel was about this evening, it is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. And especially as sports federations and sports organizations, we often forget that huge difference that we really make in the lives of others, because it's not sport that has the power to change the world. It is us using sport to change the lives of many and then really determine the significance of the life we lead through that. So I thank you for the work that you do, which we only had a very short glimpse today about, and your amazing organizations. We look forward to working with you, and we wish you all a good evening, a good morning, and hope to connect soon. Thank you so much for your participation.